This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Xcast. The truth is in here. I'm your host Matthew Latham. The accent might be familiar. I'm from the same place on earth as Tony Black, our illustrious leader, only a bit further to north in a town not as nice. And with me is my guest, Paige Schechter, who's going to be talking about the X-Fest that happened last week. Well, the last week from the date of recording. Hello Paige, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. This is just, Paige was there and she was shilling out and promoting the podcast by printing out a few flyers. And if anyone is listening to this who was there and listening to us from those flyers, I'd like to say welcome to the Xcast. Hopefully this isn't your first episode and you've listened to a couple before, but if not, then welcome. And big thank you for Paige for basically the shameless promotion.
It was my pleasure, and I want to say hello to everybody too. When I decided to go to this convention, I just had thought about the actors and who I was going to get to meet, and I didn't realize that I was going to make a number of friendships with fellow X-Files. It all started at the mixer, and I was handing out the flyers and explaining what Xcast is all about. And there were people who knew of it, and there were people who actually listened to some of the other podcasts on their way home. So I want to say hi to all my new friends, and thanks for joining us.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. I might go into into the whole nature of fandom a bit later, but I personally think it's a great thing. I mean, I've known Tony personally for years, and I do occasionally take the mick out of him. And when I say occasionally, every chance I get, I do. That's what friends do. But I am generally quite proud of what he's managed to achieve in terms of a good community of fans working together on this. And it's just nice to hear that people internationally are hearing of this and that you've managed to grow a great community. So it's nice to hear.
That's what I was telling everybody. I was saying, this isn't one of those places where fans shout each other down. You can have real serious conversation about a subject that we all love so much.
Yeah. And side note, if you are listening but you're unaware, there is also the X-Files Basement, the X-Files fan group on Facebook as well, which is like an extra section of the podcast community. So have a look for that on Facebook as well. So the X-Fest is a fan convention based in Illinois that was created and run by Jay Repsell and Josh Cornelio. It was interviewed by yourself, Paige, in episode 209, and I found that quite an interesting edition of the podcast, and I was quite curious to have like a debrief about it and about what it was like. And when I asked Tony if there's going to do, he then give me the task of speaking to Paige about it. So, so what was the X-Fest, and we'll have a brief overview of the whole weekend. What was that like?
Okay, I'll try and do this in somewhat of an order so it makes sense. The first thing was Friday. It was the mixer, and we got to pick up our tickets in advance, which is good because then you don't stand on a long line Saturday. But then there was also representatives from the X-Files Deep State game there, and they were showing us how to use it for all of us who hadn't already downloaded it onto our phones or used it on Facebook. So the makers of the game were there to show us how to use it, and that was really interesting, and I got totally hooked after I did that. So I'm playing the game all the way back to New Jersey.
I've not played the game yet, but I probably will do at some point. I know I did listen to the edition of the Xcast. I think it was at 219, where Andrew Brooker interviewed, I think, Brandon and Alina from Creative Mobile. That's it. Who they spoke to in quite an in-depth interview. So it was not good to see that they were there as well. Was it Brandon and Alina? Were they there as well?
I believe they both were. I don't have everybody's names down, but they showed the game, and it's really interesting how you can make it go in different directions. In different places, they give you options. Do you want to do it this way or do you want to do it this way? And that leads you down another segment of the game, so everybody's game is different.
Oh, cool. So was it like a communal playthrough, or was it different?
Everybody was sort of playing on their own. They just had, some tablets set up where they could show us how to do it and teach us how to get started at the very least. They gave us free drinks, which always helps if you're going to do a trivia contest or a game of Mad Libs. And they did the Mad Libs first. Basically, they had X-Files scripts, and they took out words and asked us, to provide adjectives or verbs or numbers, all that kind of thing. And then people came on the stage and read them in character. And the best thing that came out of that was an instant classic hashtag Moist Mulder. And everybody was really tickled by that one.
Oh, I dread to think.
So if you see Moist Mulder anywhere, that's where that originated.
This is still the Friday, yeah?
This is still Friday.
Yeah.
And then we split up into teams for the trivia contest, which was sort of medium to not incredibly difficult questions, but you just have to be a fan to be able to answer some of them. And basically, you're on a team. My team's name was Abduct This. And we finished second. We finished in a tie for second, and then we won the sudden death question thanks to the amazing Winston, who was he was like our cleanup hitter on the team. He made it all happen. We finished second, so we're proud of that because we were way off to the left. And when everybody's screaming their team name to get picked to answer the question, you really have to be loud if you're all the way to the left or all the way to the right from the stage. So we did really well. It was a heated and passionate event. I will say that about it.
Nowhere near as hard as the X quiz that Tony used to run.
Oh, no. They have to go 1,000,000 miles to get as hard as the X quiz.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
Except for the one question that no one can answer, which was, what was John Doggett's degree? Just stumped everybody.
Policing, I don't know.
No, it was something like doctorate in public administration. I forget it again, but I had just come off a 22-hour car drive to get to the event, so my brain wasn't completely functioning at full capacity.
Fully understand. Yeah, so was that all of Friday done?
That was pretty much Friday, but everybody is talking with each other, and it's great. Like if you've ever been to a pop culture convention and you meet other fans, usually you're asking, what was your favorite episode? Who's your favorite character? But immediately, everybody just got really comfortable and into these great discussions about the show. It was so much fun. Just I did not expect that when I decided to go.
No, it sounds pretty good. I think you find if you go into somewhere for quite a very niche interest that you're very passionate about, you're going to find other people that are passionate about it, and you've got common ground straight away. So you can have a lot of very narrow discussion, but wide as well. So and you've got like a very strong base to base yourself off. So I'm guessing that everyone was there. It was very deeply into the X-Files. So sounds like it was. Your massive X-File will probably feel right at home.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that was Friday. So then so I'm guessing we move on to Saturday then.
Right, Saturday. So they opened the building early so you could all get settled and situated, and people were already jumping onto lines for Mitch Pileggi and Nicholas Lee and Bill Davis and Annabeth Gish. They were kind of the 4 tentpole stars, and they had them each in one of the corners, and then they had tables for all the other actors. And a friend of mine, Winston again, he really was the superstar of this event. He told me if you have a platinum pass, you get to basically jump the general admission people in line. And I was going to get on Annabeth's line first, and he said, no, don't do that. Do that later when the lines have gone down some, and get all these fabulous, fabulous guest stars. In the meantime, there was like Nick Chinland and Robert Wisden, I don't know how to pronounce his name, and Michael Berryman, and Tom Noonan and the Eve twins were there. All these really great guest stars from the show. So what I did was I went to all of them first, which gave me more time to talk with all of them. And like Michael Berryman told me this amazing story of his role. He was on Revelations, and people may know him from The Hills Have Eyes. He told me an incredible story that was like my favorite story of the whole weekend. And that was when he went in to test for the role. It was the last time he ever had to do a screen test for a role. And he told the episode director, David Nutter, that nobody would be able to do the part of Owen like he would. And he'd explain why that was when they were on the set. And so after the audition, David Nutter told him he had the part, but not to tell the other actors because they were waiting to test for the role as well, and it wouldn't be very good to just tell everybody in the next room, well, this man has already got the part, you can go home. So what he did tell him when he got on the set was that he once lived in a building that also housed a mother and her 2 children, and social services were unable to protect them from the father. So it was a real tragic thing. And he felt it was very cathartic to play Owen because his character, he sort of seems like he's the villain in the beginning, but we find out he's just trying to protect a child. So he just found it incredibly resonant. It meant so much to him, and it really was very, very touching.
Did you have a chance to speak to any of the others as well at length, or how much time did you get?
Okay, well, I do this thing I call the yearbook project, and you know the book, The Complete X-Files? After the original run, this book came out called The Complete X-Files, and it talked about the whole run of the show and every specific episode. And since I do a lot of pop culture conventions, I wanted to find something that could be signed by everybody who's ever been on the show. So I take this book around to all these conventions. And usually there's like 1 or 2 people who have been on the X-Files. But as I said, on this day, this was one-stop shopping because like everybody was there. So I'm going to run down the whole list. So Mitch Pileggi, Bill Davis, Annabeth Gish, Nick Lee, Jerry Hardin, Deep Throat, Stephen Williams, who played X, Doug Hutchison, who was Eugene Victor Toombs, the Eve Girls, Sabrina and Erica Crevens, Nick Chinland, who was Donnie Pfaster, Megan Leach, Samantha Mulder, or her clones, Brian Thompson, the alien bounty hunter, Steve Railsback, Dwayne Barry, Robert Wisden, Robert Patrick Modell, Karen Conable, who of course knocked it out of the park on +1 as 4 characters, but who previously we knew from Home as the mother and Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose, and Tom Noonan from Paper Hearts, and previously mentioned Michael Berryman from Revelations. So, except for about 4 people, I needed everybody. I hadn't met any of these people before, and they all needed to sign the book. So I had, I was trying to get 15 autographs. I was trying to get 15 photo ops, and I'm running around, but I had it down. I got everything done.
Oh, wow.
I talked with everybody except for Jerry Hardin since I had met him in Atlanta, but I later did get to see part of his panel from X-Files News, who posted it on YouTube. So everybody was incredibly engaging and also proud of being on the show, even if they had just been in 1 episode. And they were telling stories about how it blew up, between the time they got the part, they filmed the part, and it aired. They never realized how big it was going to be. Just about everybody had said that, except for, people who started on the show later.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the page, and it's probably easier to list who wasn't there than it was. Yeah, I mean, I think aside from, David Duchovny, Gillian Anderson, the Lone Goodmen, and I think Robert Patrick, I think everyone else, every other key player, I think, was there. I mean, I'd love to probably met the girls who played Eve, because Eve, I think, was the first episode I ever remember watching back in 1996, and it's nice that you still get the occasional the one-time characters show up, and So, and I think it's pretty much there's a representation of like each of Tony's favourite episodes that I know of. I mean,
it does seem to be very Tony heavy.
Yeah, I mean, I can probably still hear him like being really gutted that he couldn't make it. I mean, like, he probably would have loved to visit Robert Wisden. So, because I think Push is his favourite episode, and
yes,
yeah.
it is,
Yeah.
and he's incredible. I actually spent more time talking to him about Alfred Hitchcock Presents than about the X-Files, because he did one with Martin Landau, who
Wow.
of course was in Fight the Future, and
Yeah.
we were talking about him, and then he was talking about how his other episode was with David Cassidy. So he probably didn't do a lot of talking about the Alfred Hitchcock Presents reboot at the X-Files Fest. Maybe that made me a little memorable in that regard. But just talking to these people like Steve Railsback, who was Dwayne Barry, he said he still has the crew sweatshirt that was given to him that said Virgin on the back because it was Chris Carter's first directing show. So he still has it, and he's so pleased and happy to have it. You know, he's part of it. Even the ones who were on for 1 or 2 episodes still feel like they're part of it, which is amazing.
it feels quite nice that even these people who appeared once, they're still very passionate about, or seem to still look back fondly on the work they've done. I mean, and I think we've good with praise as well. I mean, like, I really liked Paper Hearts. I thought Paper Hearts was a really, really good episode. So Tom Noonan's still like showing up and talking about it. He's still like mind blowing.
That's one of my favorite episodes as well. And he was telling me a great story about. I asked him, did David Duchovny really make his shots? And he said he made 2 of the 3 shots, and he had been a former member of the Princeton basketball squad, so he was a good basketball player. But Tom said, not as good as me. He said, I made my first shot, but they didn't want me to. I don't know why. They wanted to make it look like I couldn't play. And he's like, I really wanted a dunk. That's what he wanted to do.
Any other highlights in terms of meet any of the other guests?
Well, just everybody is a highlight. I want to shout out to Karen Conable, who already had a great X-Files presence on Twitter, talking with fans. You can ask her anything. She'll answer anything. She was just great with everybody. And Nicholas Lee, he plays the most vile character.
Dave Krychek is not the most vile character.
No, but Alex Krychek might be.
Okay, yeah. He's twin brother.
And he's the polar opposite. He had a long line all day because he stops and takes time to talk to you, and he'll ask you where you're from, and even if you're shy and don't have a question prepared for him, he's there engaging with you and talking with you, and he's just one of my favorite. He's been my favorite since the X-Files Expo back in 1998, and he still is the same way. He's still so engaging, and everybody who met him was just thrilled about it.
I don't go to many conventions. I've only been to a couple, and I've met a few famous people. I'm a massive Buffy fan, so I only briefly saw Nicholas Brendan, who was my favourite character, who played Xander Harris, who was like my favourite character for ages, and I only got about 3 seconds with him. But then you hear stories such as that where it seems like some of the actors are very switched on, in that they seem to be very aware that they probably meet hundreds and hundreds of people, but they're also very conscious of the fact that the person that are meeting them is probably a very big thing for them, and they try and make it as pleasant and as a good memory for you as possible. And it's always quite. I like stories like that. And
it definitely is, and it was Annabeth Gish's first convention, so she didn't know what to expect at all. I'm going to go back to Annabeth for a second because. I told you earlier, my friend Winston said, don't go to the tent poles, go to the guest stars first. And I did that. And then I looked over at Annabeth's table, and she must have just come back from lunch because there was no line. So I ran over there, and I'm talking to her, and I'm telling her, first of all, that I do not accept how Monica Reyes has been portrayed so far this season. I'm waiting for justice for Reyes. And I told her I'd been a fan of hers since Mystic Pizza. I saw Mystic Pizza in the theaters. I saw Shag in the theater when they came out. And my mom and my sister love the movie Hiding Out. I think my mom's still watching it on her VHS copy. And she was so pleased with that. And she said, "Are we going to do a picture?" And I said, "Well, we did the professional photo op, early." And she said, "Come on, we'll do a picture." So she gave me a picture for free. And she just seemed so happy to be there. And I was just so thrilled that, you expect certain people to be certain ways. And I expected Annabeth to be sweet. But she was over and beyond the call of sweetness. She was wonderful, and I was so thrilled about it. And kudos to Winston on that one.
Sounds great. So any other anecdotes on people or any of the guests?
Okay, so I didn't know, with all these photo ops and these autographs I had to get, I didn't think I was going to be able to see any of the panels, because they had panels running throughout the afternoon. They had the Eve Girls did a panel, and Deep Throat and X, Jerry Harden and Stephen Williams did a panel together, and then all the baddies did a panel together, which I'm sorry I missed that one, but there are some highlights on YouTube. And I thought I wasn't going to get to any panels, but I finished all my autographs in time to see the regulars panel with Annabeth Gish and Bill Davis and Mitch Pileggi at the end, and I got to ask a question, which was great. And it might be on the season 11 DVD Blu-ray box set, I hope, but if not, at least it's on YouTube. But it's so great to be able to sit there and listen to real fans ask real questions, and they don't just give you these boring answers. They know they're working a Q&A, and they liven it up with some jokes and humor. They all seem to really still love each other quite a bit. I mean, when Mitch Pileggi came out and his name was improperly pronounced as Pileggi, and he leaned over to the person who introduced him and said Pileggi, and she corrected it. And then when Annabeth came out, she said, "Well, Mr. Pileggi," so she's playing off it, and he called her Annabeth Gish, and she said, "Well, usually when people get my name wrong, it's Annabelle. They call me Annabelle." So they really have a great sense of humor about themselves, about the show, and we all got to be part of it. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, that sounds really good, sir. So we move on to a bit of the panel. So how many of the panels did you see? How many were there?
Well, that was the only one that I did see, because the Eve Girls panel and the Informants and the Baddies panel were all going on while I was doing photo ops. And so I could hear it in the background, but not distinctly hear any questions or anything like that. But I'm glad I got to this big, this was the final panel. And then, of course, after that, they had 2 screenings, which were very exciting. Doug Hutchison hosted the screening of Squeeze, and Karen Conable hosted the screening of Home. And so they came out and they introduced themselves, and Karen said she had not watched Home since it aired, and when she did that, she had to cover her eyes during the yucky bits. And she said she was determined not to do that this time. So she goes and she sits, and we're all sitting and we're watching the episode. But she's on a chair sort of behind us to the left. And we all kept peeking at her during the yucky bits to see if she was actually watching. And she was. She was. She watched the whole thing. And she said later that she was so glad that she did. And she was so glad that she shared it with the fans, because we're all, hooting and hollering and, not like raucous Rocky Horror Picture Show, well behaved, but we're cheering and laughing. And it was a great time. Then we got to ask questions of both Doug and Karen afterwards. And it really was a great way to wrap up the whole convention.
Oh, cool. So that they were the finale of the convention, and the
were.
Was it just those 2 screenings, or was there some throughout the day that you was?
No, just those 2 screens. They, I don't believe either of them had done panels, so they got to host these screenings at the end. It was great. It really was great to be able to see them watching it, and to ask questions right away when they're like fresh in your mind.
Okay, so they had a Q&A afterwards or at the start as well, or...
Right. They just came out, sort of introduced themselves, and sort of said a bit about how they got the role or why it was important. And Karen, of course, told about the yucky bits. And then after it ended, then there was like 10 or 15-minute Q&A.
Oh, okay. And was that the last bit? Was that the last part of the X Fest then? Was that the big finale?
That was it. It was all wrapped up.
Okay, and there's nothing on the Sunday.
Nope. Just Sunday. Everybody's going home, and all my new friends we're all tweeting, and we're all Facebook posting each other, with pictures. We found pictures from different places that had posted. Like there was a photographer there who took like 450 pictures. So pretty much everybody could find a picture of themselves at one of the actors' table. I found like 3 of my own when I was talking with Nick Chinland, and when I was talking with the Eve Girls, and it was so cool to be able to find that. You don't realize when you're talking to them that somebody's behind you taking a picture.
Oh, so it sounded like it was really, really good time. It was a lot of fun.
It was the best, and they've already announced there will be a second one. The date's announced. It's April 13th, 2019. Mitch Pileggi said he expects to see us all back there, and he expects to see everybody who couldn't come, coming in droves. And the venue's going to be determined by the end of April, according to Jay Repsol. There were dozens of countries represented at this one, and he's expecting that number is going to increase substantially for the 2019 version.
Do you know roughly how many? Could you get a rough idea of how many different countries are there, or do you know? Or?
It's like a couple dozen, and a lot of them asked questions during the panels, and it was so cool to see, what their impression is of the show or what they take away from it, because it can be so different from the US or the UK culture. The way they see it is different. So it was interesting to get their take on it. So if you watch like the full panel over at YouTube, you can see some of the different questions that are asked.
In terms of so we've got a rough overview of it. So what would you say was your favourite part of it, and what was the...
Goodness, I can't pick a favorite part. I mean, just like every time that I met someone, like Steve Railsback telling me I'm a great lady, how can you not love that? And like I'm on a photo op with Nick Lee, and we have our arms around each other, and he leans his head on mine, and the people behind me in line are all going, "Aw," and that's the kind of stuff I'm going to remember. I'm going to remember meeting all these great people at the event, and hopefully seeing them again next year, and seeing what the con has for us next year. I mean, who's going to be coming? And this Con Life, Jay is asking already for who would you like to see? And because the show was on for so long and had so many great guest stars, and then there's, like you previously said, there's David and Jillian, and the Lone Gunmen, people were saying they wanted to see them even more than David and Jillian while I was there. At least the people who talked to me. This may not be representative of the group at large, but people wanted to see the Lone Gunmen, and Laurie Holden, who played Marita Covarrubias, and Chris Owens, who was the great Mutato, and then later Jeffrey Spender, and you just can go on and on. There's like a wish list, like James Pickens and Robert Patrick, and I could go on for another half hour just listing people who I'd love to get in my yearbook.
So nothing selfish, just anyone who's not on my yearbook. That's who I want. Yeah.
Anybody who's not already in the yearbook.
So who have you got in your yearbook that wasn't at the con then? So how many have you already got?
Well, I pretty much doubled the number in the yearbook, and I've been doing it for like 2 or 3 years, and you get 1 or 2 people at a con, and you think, wow, I'm doing pretty good here. I got 19 signatures, and then you go here and you add 13, and it's like the number has doubled. But I got to meet Martin Landau before he passed away, and he was one of the kindest people I've ever met. So present, and it's so sad that he's gone and that all the X-Files fans can't meet him because so wonderful. And I met Veronica Cartwright, and she's telling me great stories. And Brad Dourif, I'm sure everybody would like to see Brad Dourif at next year's convention. Luther Lee Boggs from Beyond the Sea, because he's a great. He's another great who really is present when he's talking to you and interested in what you have to say. And it's so many. There's just so many. And then not to mention, the people behind the scenes, Chris Carter and the Morgan brothers and Vince Gilligan. I mean, we can just go on forever in this regard.
It might just be easy just to open up IMDb. Just open up IMDb for the X-Files and just read from there, and that's your wish list. It sounds really great. It sounds like a really good time, particularly for any X-Files fan. And I'm guessing, and the whole thing, from the sounds of it, everyone seemed very positive. All the fans there was all very positive and just friendly. And
I think it definitely was. I mean, it was a first-time convention, so there were some bumps and bruises. I love how Jay Repsol was on the floor and helping people. Like everybody was coming up to him with issues they had, great or small, and he was working the problem right then and there. He was very in tune to what was going on. And I found that amazing that he would be there for people who had questions or problems or issues. Really interested in making it the best possible con. So, everything's not going to be perfect. If you're a general admission person and you're waiting on Nick Lee's line for 2 hours, that might be a little disheartening to you. But it'll also help you decide to get the platinum pass next time, I suppose. Yeah. If you can afford it, if you can swing it, that's the way to go. You can go wherever you want, whenever you want. Well, I shouldn't say that. You can't go backstage and sit with the actors while they're eating lunch or something. But you can get a lot done by using the platinum pass.
Oh, cool. No, that's good. That's good. And I'm gonna guess the answer already, but I'm assuming that if anyone who wasn't there last year who would be interested in going to the next one, would you recommend it?
Nope. I say no. No. Leave all the actors to me. I will. Yeah. I will let them hug me. And that reminds me of another story I'm going to tell real quick with Stephen Williams, who played Mr. X.
Okay.
I was doing a photo op with him, and we're in this hug, and he wouldn't let go. And the photographer's trying to move things along. And I'm like, it's not me, it's him. And she's like, I know. So she had seen this behavior before.
Oh, wow. It sounds like a really good time. And as Paige said, it's awful, don't go, just so that she can jump to the front of the queues. So there's no reason for you to go, of course. No. I'd
really love to meet more people, like along the lines of the great friends that I made at this event, Nikki and Tasha and Winston, and there's so many, and I'm leaving people out, and I'm so sorry about that because there were literally dozens of friends that I made at this event.
Okay, it sounds like a really, really good time, and I'm hoping that it just goes from strength to strength next year.
Come visit me on Twitter. I'm at x-pay, P-A-I, or at max_tunage, Tuneage. My sister and I do a rewatch blog. We are in the middle of the 4th season, and I post the blog pretty much weekly, except when I'm at an X-Files convention over at Twitter. So come talk to me there. Of course, come talk to us at X-Files Basement on Facebook as well.
If you ever want to follow me on Twitter, it's a locked account, but if you look normal, I might let you follow me. Zanmat, which is X and Matt, which is a reference to Xander Harris, played by Nicholas Brendan, who I mentioned earlier. But I'm on Twitter as well. And thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you to anyone who's started listening to us from the X Fest. I hope you enjoyed the weekend, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the podcast. There's so much you got to look forward to. And until next time, trust no one.
The Xcast, an X-Files podcast, is produced and presented by Tony Black, alongside a dedicated group of podcasters and X-Files fans. You can find us on Twitter at the Xcast, and on Facebook if you type in the Xcast, or at our group X-Files Basement, an Xcast podcast fan group, where you can continue the discussion about all things Mulder and Scully. If you want to support the Xcast further, you can now subscribe and become a patron of the show on Patreon. On Google, just type patreon.com/the Xcast. That's Patreon. You'll see all of our tiers, subscription options and perks, which include early access to episodes, bonus content such as commentaries on X-Files episodes, access to a patron chat zone, and even appearing on one of our patron roundtable discussions. We would appreciate any support you can give the show, so just go to patreon.com/the Xcast to find out more. Our title music is provided courtesy of Will A, who you can find on Twitter at IamWillAYE.